The Puma King is an iconic football boot with a ton of history. And over the past couple years, it went through a serious makeover, changing from leather to a new synthetic. And just recently, Puma have refreshed the series again, and right here I have the second tier takedown Puma King Pro. They retail for $120 US. I just finished testing them out, and I definitely have some thoughts on them. So in this video, I'm gonna tell you what I think Puma gets right with these boots, as well as what they get wrong. And then most importantly, we'll discuss whether or not these are worth buying, or if you should consider some other options. And for all the different recommendations I discuss, I'll try and leave links in the description where you can find them on sale. Feel free to leave a like if you haven't already, it really helps out the channel. And without further ado, let's get into things, starting with the design. So first things first, as I mentioned, Puma has transitioned the King series to be entirely synthetic. Whereas the Kings used to be known as a classic, iconic leather football boot, now they're constructed with what Puma is calling their K-Better material. And as you can kind of infer with that K-Better name, they're essentially saying that this upper can do everything that leather can do and potentially even better. Now, I'm not really sure if I would agree with that statement on the face of it, but I will say that the upper on the Puma Kings is relatively impressive, especially towards the toe box. It's very soft, very plush, and definitely does have that feeling that kind of reminds you of a plush leather feel. But at the same time, it's kind of hard to explain. The upper itself is almost too smooth, a little bit too perfect to accurately mimic leather. Puma doesn't really go all out here the same way that Nike does on their new Tiempo, where they even mimic the grain structure of the leather material in their synthetic. This one is a little bit more obviously synthetic in my opinion. Now that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's just something to expect. If you think that these are gonna feel exactly like a pair of leather boots, you probably are going to be able to notice the differences. On the sides of the boot, you're also going to get these ridged textural elements that are going to help you a little bit with cushioning your touch, and then maybe add a little bit more grip on your strikes as well. But overall, the finish of the upper itself is very matte and doesn't have a lot of stickiness to it. Then unlike most other Puma boots like the Future as well as the Ultra, you're actually gonna have a really simple lacing system with a traditional thin tongue here, which is made from what seems to be the same K-Better material that the rest of the upper is constructed from. And to Puma's credit, the tongue that's used here, as well as the material throughout the rest of the upper, it does feel pretty high quality, and it's around what I would expect for a boot that costs just over $100. And as far as looks go, it's definitely the most traditional looking boot I would say in Puma's lineup, with the Future and Ultra just being a little bit more flashy and a little bit more out there. The heel area, which we'll get into later, is on the slightly shallower side, but it does have a minimal amount of padding around the heel that gives it just the right amount of cushion. And then if you turn around to the back of the boots, you have what is a very, very simple FG/AG sole plate that's just gonna have all conical studs in the heel and throughout the forefoot. And we see that label used a lot on certain football boots, especially with Puma, where they advertise them as firm ground/artificial grass, as if you can wear them on either surface. And sometimes I think that label is accurate, and other times maybe not so accurate. There have definitely been some boots with that FG/AG label that I just wouldn't want to wear on artificial grass because maybe they have some bladed studs that are too aggressive. But when it comes to the sole plate on the Puma King Pro here, these are all relatively short, rounded studs here, and I used them on artificial grass and didn't have any issues with the studs getting caught in the surface. So Puma is at least accurate with their marketing here, and I do think that the sole plate is fine for both use on firm ground natural grass and artificial grass pitches. And then in terms of the flex of the sole plate here, it's definitely going to be on the slightly softer side of medium. I would say it has a little bit more give to it compared to the sole plates on Puma's other models like the Future and especially the Ultra. But what you guys care about the most and what I care about the most is how these boots feel on feet, so let's get into the fit. So when I got these boots out of the box for the first time, I definitely felt that there were reasons to be optimistic. I mean, overall, I thought that they looked pretty good. I think the upper feels relatively high quality as well, has a nice softness to it. Generally, I like the style of traditional football boots with this open lacing system, but I have to say, after wearing these, the fit is pretty bad. And I mean, where do I start? I picked these up in my standard size 10.5 US, which is what I normally go with for all of my football boots. And right away, I noticed that the fit towards the front of the boots in the toe box was really tight. And normally this isn't that much of an issue, and I would typically just recommend going up around a half size to get the best fit. But while the boots were too tight towards the front of the toe box, they were also somehow not secure and extremely lacking in lockdown towards the heel area. And even when I had these laced up as tight as possible after multiple adjustments, they were still slipping towards the back of the boots. And again, you wouldn't be able to fix this problem by going a half size down, because if I went a half size down from this, my feet probably wouldn't be able to fit in the boots. And for me, that's where the fit of these boots just really falls short and is disappointing. It's the complete lack of lockdown. Now, poor lockdown in a football boot can be caused by a variety of factors, probably the biggest in this case being the heel cup, which is this area here, is just a bit too shallow. And then the lockdown can be made even worse by just suboptimal placement of the lace holes in the lacing system, especially when you get up towards the ankle. And there's other small factors that also contribute to the lockdown towards the back of the boots, including the angle of the heel cup that you see here, as well as even the stiffness of the sole plate can have an impact too. And at the end of the day, when lockdown is good in a pair of football boots, it's not something that you really notice. They just fit correctly, you lace them up, and then they feel fine on your feet. When you're running or dribbling, you feel tons of security and you don't feel your feet slipping out of the back of the boots. It's only when the lockdown is missing that it becomes so noticeable, and that's the first and main thing that I noticed with the Puma King Pro. It basically just results in this constant nagging feeling while you're wearing the boots that your ankles and heel just aren't locked into the boots. And then as far as, good things to say about the fit, now that I've gotten that out of the way, there really isn't much to go off of. I can say that the boots didn't necessarily feel painful. I mean, although they were snug towards the midfoot and toe box, I didn't really get uncomfortable pressure points. And, I didn't really feel any discomfort throughout any part of the lacing system either. It was more just that lack of lockdown made them not a lot of fun to wear. And considering the price point of these boots over $100, this really isn't an issue that you should be encountering. All right, next up, let's talk about how that fit affected what they were like to play in. All right, so as I mentioned, once I started dribbling and getting a few touches in, I did do my best to adjust the lacing system and tighten it up as much as possible, and that did add just a little bit of security towards the ankle, but nevertheless, I still had that constant nagging sensation of not enough security towards the heel. Now, I will say that touches on the ball itself do feel pretty good. I mean, the K-Better upper is nothing to laugh at. It feels really soft, super plush to the touch, and you do get a decent amount of sensitivity, so when you're juggling or dribbling, it's a relatively nice upper. The problem really comes out when you start dribbling or just running at speeds, and then you notice that lack of security. Now, as I mentioned, you can't really fix this problem with sizing, because if you went down a half size from your standard size in these, they would probably just be too tight and just extremely uncomfortable. But there is one thing you can do. If you end up with a pair of boots, either the Puma King Pros themselves or another pair of boots where you don't have good lockdown in the heel area, one hack I've used in the past that does help a little bit is actually just removing the insole of the football boots. You see, if you remove the insole, essentially what happens is you are just going to get a little bit of extra volume within the boots, especially towards that heel area, and it'll just allow you to get a little bit more lockdown and security around the ankle. Now, obviously, I think for a lot of players, it's not really ideal to take out the insoles of your boots, but this is a tip that I thought was worth mentioning because for me, at least, when I have a pair of boots like this that has poor lockdown, it definitely makes for an improved playing experience when I take out the insoles. All right, next up, let's talk about the value or lack thereof when it comes to the new Puma King Pros. I mean, yeah, as I kind of alluded to already, the price point for these is just underwhelming. I paid $120 for these, and while that may not be the most expensive price point for football boots, if I'm paying over $100, I'm expecting to get a good competitive pair of boots. At the very least, I'm expecting them to hit the minimal marks of comfort, lockdown, and traction that I would expect from almost any decent football boot. And while this does hit the traction portion of things, I would say it misses comfort and it definitely misses on lockdown. And even if these were $70, in fact, even if they were half off and down as low as $60 US, I still wouldn't recommend them. I mean, just to name two off the bat, the Copa Pure 2 League and the Tiempo Legend 10 Academy, both around $70 and both better football boots than this. And speaking of other football boots, let's talk about the competitors that you should consider instead of the Puma King Pro. So you may be a person who's actually upset that Puma transitioned away from using real leather in the King series, and if that's the case, you might be interested in an actual leather football boot around that $100 price point. And if that is the case, there are several great options to choose from. First, there's the Nike Premier 3, one of my favorite boots around that $100 price point. This one is still going to be using natural calf leather. And unlike the Puma King Pro, the Premier is actually going to perform well on the field. Another great leather option around $100 is going to be the Copo Gloro 2 from Adidas. It's got a similar design aesthetic to the Premier 3s with a slightly thicker calf leather upper, but another great boot. And then if you go up to around the $130 price point, you can find the New Balance 442 V2 Pro. This is one of my favorite leather football boots from last year. It's extremely lightweight. I think they weigh pretty much the same as the new Vapor 16s from Nike. It's got a really aggressive sole plate. I will note though that you can find the New Balance 442s in leather. This is a kangaroo leather upper variation that you see here. If you see this colorway on offer, it's probably going to be that kangaroo leather version. But New Balance did come out with a new synthetic version that I have not tested out yet. So just be sure to check the description and make sure you know if you're getting the leather version or the synthetic model. And then maybe you're someone who actually respects Puma's initiative here to transition from leather to synthetic. And maybe you do want to get a good pair of affordable synthetic football boots. And if that is the case, there are some other great alternatives. The first, and I think the most obvious in this category, is going to be the Tiempo Legend 10 Pro from Nike. So that is another boot that also retails for a similar price. The Legend 10 Pro is going to be around $130, and they use Nike's new Fly Touch upper. And in my opinion, it's going to be a better representation of leather compared to the K-Better material that Puma uses here. And you also get the addition of more premium features in the Legend 10 Pro, like a soft, stretchy fly knit collar. And then if your budget is a little bit more constrained, but you still want a great football boot, check out the F50 League from Adidas. Either the standard version or the messy variation, they're both great. And that boot from Adidas retails for just $90, so $30 cheaper than these, and it pretty much blows them away. Now, I will say that that wasn't always the case when it came to Adidas takedown boots. I thought that some of Adidas takedowns from previous years were actually quite underwhelming, and they just didn't hold a candle to the more expensive versions. But within the last 12 months and in all of their recent product releases, Adidas has really stepped up their game when it comes to takedown boots, and I think Puma needs to do the same. So what are my final thoughts on the new Puma King Pro? Well, listen guys, I still have hope for the Puma King series. As I mentioned, it's an iconic model line, and I probably will try and get my hands on some of the other variations of this boot just to see how they compare. But for a retail price of $120, I think Puma has to do better than this. And that's especially the case considering how many great options are available around this price point. And guys, that is going to do it for this video. Let me know in the comments below if you've gotten the chance to try on these boots. Maybe you think I'm crazy and they fit perfectly for you. And if that's the case, I want you to let me know. Also, feel free to let me know if there's any other boots you're interested in me reviewing as well. Thank you again so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.